And a very good evening, everybody. So we continue to track Potential Tropical Cyclone 9 out in the Atlantic. And while the system doesn't yet have a name, there have been some changes in the forecast this evening that we want to bring to you, including Central Georgia now being included in that forecast cone of uncertainty. So let's go ahead and get to the latest on the system. Again, Potential Tropical Cyclone 9 does have winds of tropical storm strength. It's gusting to 45 miles an hour now. But the reason it has not yet received a name from the National Hurricane Center is that as these hurricane hunters are flying in and out of the system, they are not yet finding a closed low-level circulation. Now, that sounds kind of technical, but it's one of the defining characteristics of a tropical storm. And so as long as the system doesn't have that, it's not going to receive a name. It's also struggled to get organized today. See, it looks a little ragged on satellite imagery, and you can see those scraggly-looking clouds on the western side of the system. When clouds look like that with a tropical storm, they're normally encountering some wind shear, so there are some factors working against it. But the Hurricane Center does expect this storm to get its act together and become a tropical storm. And so let's go through the latest forecast on this system. Over the next day or so, it could finally receive that name. That would be Isaias. But then tomorrow, it's going to be moving over the island of Hispaniola, bringing strong winds and rain to the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Now, that's a very mountainous region. So as the system reemerges out over the water on Friday, it will likely have been weakened once again due to that land interaction. Then we go through Friday, and the system is going to be moving between Cuba and the Bahamas. There's still a chance that it could move over Cuba and weaken a little bit further. But for now, the forecast does call for the system to be over water during that time frame where it could gain a little bit of strength. And then as we get towards this weekend, that's when the United States comes into play. So here's days 3, 4, and 5 on that projected cone of uncertainty, which now includes just about the entire state of Florida and a good chunk of Georgia. So the forecast officially calls for this to be a tropical storm as the system is moving through this region, but there's a lot of uncertainty on both exactly where the storm could fall. Notice the cone goes on both sides of Florida, so it could go back out to sea or it could move into the Gulf of Mexico. And there's uncertainty with the strength because at this point in time, the system very well may have dissipated due to that land interaction, or it could have stayed out over water longer and gained some strength. So bottom line, if you live in this cone, which is all of us here in Central Georgia, or if you have some interest along the coast, you just need to keep paying attention to this system and know that we could have some rain and wind impacts in this region over the coming days. The forecast models, which help us sort out some of this uncertainty, still show, well, a lot of uncertainty. So here's the latest on the spaghetti plots. Notice how there's a cluster of storms, or a cluster of models rather, that go to the west of Florida in the Gulf of Mexico. That would result in a little bit stronger of a system. There's also a cluster of models that keep the storm away from Florida and off the East Coast, which would result in very little to no impacts on land in Georgia. So there's just a wide variety of options that could play out right now. And that's why, as this system is still disorganized, we're still going to have that uncertainty over the next few days. So that's kind of some confusing stuff, right? Here's the key messages that you need to take away tonight. Land interaction tomorrow is going to limit that development. After the system passes Hispaniola, if it's still intact, then we'll get a better handle on this forecast. So until then, there's still going to be a lot of uncertainty with the forecast track and intensity. Again, if you're in that cone we just showed, just know that you need to be paying attention to this forecast and thinking about your tropical plans along the coast, and U.S. impacts remain possible. At this point in time, it doesn't look like this is going to be a major hurricane that impacts the United States, but tropical storm conditions are certainly possible along some coastal areas as we get into next week. So there's a lot of information surrounding the system. We'll continue to break it down for you both on air and online here at 13 WMAZ.